Welcome back, everybody, to this month's Camino Wisdom Stories. Our theme today is active ingredients of the Camino. I'm Kathy Kay, and I'm going to hand it over to Adam Wells, who's going to introduce our theme for us today.
Well, hi everyone. Real pleasure to be here again. Active ingredients of the Camino. And so this is a photograph just outside, just before you get to Estella, there's a fountain and there's this little sign, good bread, excellent water and wine, meat and fish filled with all of happiness. So that's my translation of it all. But I think there is one, if there was enough space, I think there's one, what I call an active ingredient of the Camino missing from this sign, which is ibuprofen. Who who doesn't walk their Camino without ibuprofen or Advil? Let's confess. I think we all carry one of these tablets to dumb down the pain. So just being serious, what is an active ingredient? Well, it's any ingredient that provides biologically active or other direct effect in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, or to affect the structure or any function of the body of humans or animals. So it's to make us well again, I guess. So being serious about this, I think, and I've heard it said many, many times, and I think we've all felt it, that the Camino in many ways is natural medicine. So I just want to go a bit deeper. Let's not take our ibuprofen, but what if when we walk our Caminos, that we're experiencing active ingredients which we may not be aware of, which are working behind in the background? Because after all, the Camino doesn't give us what we want. The Camino gives us what we need. I think, we all walk for our own reasons, but we find things happening to us which we don't expect. And perhaps that's part of the Camino's natural medicine. So I've put together some things, some pictures of what I think might be what some of these active ingredients of what which relate to the Camino, which work for all of us if we're willing to take the medicine or we're aware enough of it. So, self-love, who sometimes we don't give to ourselves before we go off on Camino. We're giving to everybody else. We always give to somebody else, but the Camino forces us to stop, whatever reason, slow down, rest, and eventually, actually, I have to give to myself. Could that be an active ingredient? Self-love, freedom. We spend our life in a routine, in the daily routine, on autopilot, and then suddenly we're free and we get to see our life from a different perspective and everything from a different perspective. Active ingredient working in the background. Then there's that communitas. How often do we get to be somewhere where our status, our power, our successes, our failures, the money we have, all of that stuff in the outside world really doesn't matter. We're just simply a pilgrim, all together helping each other get to Santiago. And how does that change us with how we look at life? And then there's that solitude, silence, and stillness. How can we hear that deep, wise inner voice that's within us that inherently knows what's right for us most of the time? How can we hear that voice if we don't engage solitude, stillness, and silence? That's another active agreement, I think. And then there's the mystery. We're more than our ego. We're not just our ego. There's something that's running behind all of this mystery of life, where we don't have all the answers to everything, and we get to learn maybe humility and see things from a different perspective there too. And I think a big one too is purpose and direction. The Camino is natural medicine. It can be a container when we don't know what the hell to do in life, or what's coming next. We're grieving or whatever. We can walk the Camino as a container, and it gives us a sense of purpose and a sense of direction when we need it most. And we don't have anything to head for. So again, an active ingredient there. I think for me, my first Camino, the active ingredient that really worked for me, which was freedom. I knew what I didn't want. I really knew what I didn't want job wise, and I had no idea what I did want. And it was just that wide open space of 5 weeks of just the more I walked into Spain, the more I was walking into myself. Um, when I got, you get to the middle part of the Meseta, I was almost feeling childlike again, just connecting to long lost energies. And so something was at play. And I think that's the case for all of us. Whatever reason we walk the Camino, whether it doesn't matter, I think if we return home slightly different to the person that left, then something's happened to us. And maybe that's the inquiry for ourselves is what was that all about? Now, you know, we're each unique. No two Caminos are the same. If we take any medicine, it will affect each person differently. So I mean, what was the unique active ingredients for your Camino? How did the magic happen there? So that's really the question. I think that if we allow ourselves to delve deeply, we can see actually there's some benefits to bring back home with us with these active ingredients. So I hope that resonates. Any comments or anything?
It's fantastic, Adam. Thank you. That was so clear. And
Mm.
yes, we want to just open this up now. Ronnie, we're going to start with you because I see your hand is up. We just want to hear from you. Did that resonate with you? Do you have stories, comments, or anything like that? So,
One of the active ingredients that I found maybe that was most important on certainly my first Camino, definitely my subsequent Caminos, is trust. I think just trust in the journey and trust in yourself and trust that whatever is happening, it is leading you toward something that you're meant to encounter. I probably said this before in our meetings, but I sort of adopted this mantra on my first Camino of following the white rabbit because I look at Caminos as sort of being like your Alice in Wonderland. You're thrust into this unfamiliar, crazy, unstructured space, and it's you have to trust that whatever you're being led through is purposeful and it's leading you somewhere. And so every Camino that I've walked since that first one, I've had a white rabbit with me. The Portuguese I walked, with a kind of a smallish, I guess, but well, bigger than that, but like stuffed rabbit in my little pocket. And then for now, I have a little white rabbit keychain. I don't know. I think there's something to that the trust in the journey is really critical.
oh my gosh, thank you, Ronnie. I completely agree with you. And it's so great to hear all of the different things that you put into that category, trusting yourself, trusting others, trusting the journey. And I think what you're speaking to also is Adam put it on one of the pictures is the mystery. Like there's something else going on here. And if I keep going, if I trust this journey, something will happen. Thanks so much for sharing that.
So what was coming up? I think to me, trust is yeah, definitely. But I think trust is a muscle, and it doesn't come automatically. I think that's the beauty of where we get the trust from the Camino is over the extended period of time of all these different sequence of events, and we're just allowing ourselves to let go and surrender and trust. And then that's the muscle, some muscle that gets built up over time, which when we get home and we can continue that, recognize actually what I need to do in real life is trust and 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 trusting in the mystery. And then we get to look at life from a completely different perspective in the day to day as a result. So yeah, thanks, Ronnie, for that's a really critical one. Yeah, trust.
I love that you keep bringing the Camino back home and bringing our gifts back home, trusting ourselves, trusting all the things that we learned there, seeing that the world might be for us after all.
So the word that, as you were expressing these different components, active ingredients, Adam, the word that came to me was openness, which it's like, oh yeah, that's the mystery thing too. And trust, same thing. So I'm with you, Ronnie. The thing that was interesting to me was that there was something there that was a big active ingredient that I didn't know about until I got there, and that was Camino lessons. And the first time somebody brought up the topic with me, have you had any Camino lessons yet? It was that was the focus at that point for the rest of my Camino. It was like, what Camino lessons am I going to get? Which is a trust exercise too. And there were a whole bunch of them. I was really thrilled to have that container, that concept to hold what I got. That those were all my Camino lessons, personalized for me from the divine, or however you look at it.
Mm. Well, and shout out to Deborah here. She's written a great book about all of her Camino lessons, and it happens to be called Camino Lessons. But you're right, like having that as a context, almost like a bucket. Okay, I'm going to keep going on Adam's theme here today of bringing all that great stuff home. It's like we've got this extra little side pocket, in our pants pocket or in our backpack or something, and you're just keep putting them in there as something to collect. Thanks so much, Deborah.
I think openness is probably your comment right there at the beginning with openness. I think that is probably, if there's going to be one first active ingredient, that is the one, to be open to whatever happens. And not, when you arrive on Camino, I'm just going to be open, and then everything else follows. So I think that's a critical one, because then you're allowing the active ingredient to work, I suppose.
Mm.
Hi. So my first thought was it would be there will be magic, and that change is unpredictable. And so I've walked two times on the Frances, and the first time I think I thought that I would have the experiences that the people in the books and the films and the YouTube videos had, and people around me that I had met here who had been on the Camino. And the one real lesson is that didn't happen at all. It was just even the questions I might have had before I started weren't the ones that were answered. Different questions were answered. Things I didn't even think to ask were answered. And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. What you share is such a great lesson, Matthew. I really hope you heard that. To leave expectations at home. Harriet, you just spoke to that. And I think also what you're saying goes along with the openness as well. Thank you.
Those are also many good topics. Trust is, my first day in the Camino, I'm going up the mountain over the Pyrenees from St. John, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not a very good idea. And I'm so tired and I'm so hurt and so wasted. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to make the next stage. Well, nobody told me I didn't have to make the next stage in the guidebook. I can go where I want to go. I can go 10 kilometers instead of the 25 or whatever. I learned that slowly, that to expect the unexpected, that if I'm not feeling well or I'm not doing well, then I do my own pace and I just accept what's been happening to me. I really like Deborah's book about the Camino lessons. This has been a big thing for me on the Camino, that the Camino's a teacher. My teacher, the pilgrimage is what I'm learning how to become more healthy. It's my medicine. It's what I need to take the time to have that mystery, to have the silence over there, to look at myself and what are things in my life that I would like to change to make my life better and better for people around me, for people that I love. Is it a familial change I got to do, or a societal change, or economics, or is it my growth or my health, or what is it that I would like to change, so that when I do come back, I have a list. I know what it is that I would like to change. And I'm very fortunate. I feel very lucky that I've got a few very close friends that I can talk to about this rather than them thinking, oh, he's going to pull his darn Camino pictures out again and start showing me all these pictures. They're asking me what happened and what are you going to try to do this time?
Mhm.
And there's the medicine. It's making me healthier in my own body, in my own spirit, in my own mind as I go along. I've been really lucky to have been over there a number of times, going back in September. I really look forward to it. It's become part of the way that I live now. The changes that I make and the communal spirit that I feel I have in myself.
Mhm.
And you people are a big part of this as well. I enjoy so much these sessions because I learn from you all, and what I think I might have, I find I might change because I've learned something different from you. So it's been a real benefit. Thank you all.
I like that, Dale, that in talking about our Caminos in places like this, we get to hear from other people, which triggers our thought, which is so much like the Camino, where we hear different ideas and things from stories from other people.
Mm.
And I think the biggest one I heard from you today, the biggest active ingredient, because you did say that the Camino is medicine for you, but the solitude. And um, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, things just bubble up that maybe in my busy life, I'm not necessarily um, slowing down enough or listening or tuning in to really hear that. I'm going to jump in and say one other thing. I think it's also the pattern interrupt where it's not the same on the Camino as it is at home. And so it's this different perspective where I can see I'm showing up differently. Life looks different here. Other people are showing up differently. And it shows me that active ingredient shows me different options that maybe I hadn't previously been aware of.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Dale, and thanks, Dale. And I think your comment there about learn, we each learn from each other, and I think that speaks to the essence of what a pilgrim is. You're a stranger in a foreign land. It's amazing technology. We're all strangers in different lands on this Zoom call, but essentially we're all pilgrims, and we continue to be pilgrims because pilgrim comes into the village with one perspective from their world, and that then they communicate with the person in the village, and there's an exchange, and there's a transformation of consciousness between both pilgrim and villager, and something positive comes out from that, and that's what we're doing here. So you saying that made me just suddenly think that perhaps that's the message: is actually we don't leave behind being a pilgrim in Spain. We continue to be a pilgrim in day-to-day life,
Mm.
which is what we're each doing here on this call right now. And that must be an active ingredient too. So thank you for really highlighting that.
Oh, thank you. And I'm looking so forward to the Canada American gathering of pilgrims next month in Vancouver, where I'm actually going to meet some of you people in 3D. You'll be live. That's going to be so nice. And that theme is bridges of culture and hearts. It's the community of pilgrimage and pilgrims. So it's going to be a great time. Thank you.
I'm just hoping that I can articulate what I'm thinking, but so the idea of ingredients and all, I think so. My first Camino was over 2 years ago, and I remember just training and being prepared and wanting to be in the right headspace and just really getting the most out of the Camino. And then I remember coming home and I was still very reflective about how is this transformative, and sometimes we go with the idea that there's and some people mentioned I'll have answers to certain questions and that sort of thing. And it was none of that, and it wasn't an empty feeling. And then last year I went and did another portion of it, and I felt differently embarking on this other, phase of it. It wasn't the same. And then coming back, it's still being very contemplative about what is the meaning of all this. And for me, I've had to shed the ingredient list. And I know, as Adam shared, it's not things, but the mystery, that, community, communitas, and all that. And I am starting to really see the paradox and appreciating scarcity and realizing that when I'm in that space where I can shed things, that's when it's generative. That's when trust becomes my armor. That's when courage, and it's not something I put on. It transforms me. And I think, I often felt like I want to get away and go on another Camino. I need to get out of here. And sometimes I go on road trips and I'm just like, out of here, um, and that's good for me because it puts me in a place where I can reconnect. But I'm also thinking about the paradox about leaving and coming back home. And for me, the home is not a place. It's not back to something in the past. It's to my authentic self. And that's the home that I'm just hungering and longing for. It's just sort of like this holy longing to get back to who I truly am. And so as I'm thinking about the ingredients, it's letting go and allowing something that's truly life-giving to flourish. So I'm finally getting to a place where I'm appreciating that part of the Camino.
I'd say you did a phenomenal job putting that into words, Rhonda. That was gorgeous. There's so much in there. And I don't know where to begin. I'm going to begin at the end, where it seems like you said, I'm finally getting to. It seems like one of the active ingredients of the return journey is time. And then the time to contemplate, the time to integrate, the time to reflect, or whatever it is. I love that you name that home is back to the authentic self. So really, if we look at what are the active ingredients of the Camino, and the goal is to find the authentic self, you just spoke to it so beautifully.
I'm glad you heard that.
And the word paradox, absolutely. It's not one that Adam and I have talked about in our preparation for this, but yeah, I'm going to stop there. Adam, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think Rhonda, you made a very intuitive point. Like you're running, you felt you had to run away to go back to run away, just get away or go to Spain on Camino. But I think that speaks to the fact that life is movement. We're not. That speaks to the Camino, isn't it? We're moving every day. We may not know where we're exactly moving. Well, we know we're going to Santiago on the Camino, but in the rest of life, we may not know. But the fact is, something's bubbling up inside me to want to move. And we'll come back to center, hopefully, from that. So I think that speaks to an active ingredient of the need to move. I know what I may not know I might know what I don't know what I do want, but I have to move from something to something. And I think that's a key. You just saying that is profound in that sense, because it applies to all of us as humans.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thanks again, Rhonda. What a beautiful journey, sacred journey.
Yeah.
Lynn.
Hi. Boy, what a great topic and lots of very interesting responses so far. I'm kind of blown away and hoping that I can say something that might be even marginally interesting. But when I started my Caminos, I knew that I was going to be confronting myself in a very sort of solitary manner, and that I had to trust myself. And one of the things that I started in France, not at Saint-Jean, I started in Le Puy-en-Velay. And the first several days of that journey is kind of treacherous. There's lots of ups and downs and some very rocky, narrow trails. They're actually trails. They're hiking trails, not, nice broad Camino avenues, if you will. But I kept saying to myself, take care of yourself in French. Prends soin de toi. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. And I would say it over and over again when I was going down a long, rocky descent, which always scares me. And I would just say it and tell myself that I needed to trust me and that I needed to take care of me. And I was doing this all on my own. I had nobody going with me. I did develop a community of people because I gave out my little shell charms. I started even in 2017 doing that, and I have done it on all 5 of the Caminos that I have done. Um, I had a boarded 6th Camino this last year, and I was going to go with people, and I have decided that I can never do a Camino with people again. I have to do it all by my own.
Mm.
And I enjoy the solitariness. Kathy or somebody was talking about things bubbling up as you're walking. I mean, that was just my thing. I would be walking along and suddenly a memory or a thought or a person would just invade my space. And I would have to walk along for several kilometers and think about that and think about what it meant in my life. And um, you know, these memories that I just had gone from my consciousness, and suddenly they were bubbling back up again. And they must have been significant because I had to confront them. I had to go into them, and I had to sort of strangle them and get the meaning out of them, if you will. But as I walked, it was evident to me that there were things that I needed to confront and that I needed to bring back with me. I needed to bring those memories and those things back with me. Um, I think communitas is very important. I'm not seeing it so much in the Camino Português at the moment. I see lots of people walking, but they don't seem to be hanging out together, if you know what I mean. And it makes me sad. They walk right by my house, so when I go out and walk my dog, I go out and I distribute my little charms to people who are walking. And I see sometimes they ask me why I'm doing it, and I say, well, it brings me joy. And some lady opened up her eyes really wide and she said, well, it brings me joy too. And I said, great. That's what I'm doing it for. I want to spread joy. And I want you to bring that joy with you as you traverse this Camino. I sometimes see their sorrow too. I've given I've given people charms and they've burst into tears. And because it's something that they're not expecting. They're taking the walk for maybe a sorrowful reason. They are mourning someone, and it touches them. And that's what I continue to want to do with people, is to touch them and to give them a nice little memory of the place that I live, and maybe to take that with them to Santiago. I've met so many people by doing this, and had so many different reactions. And that's what I take away. I bring that joy back to me. I've brought the memories back with me. And I continue to think about those things and to think about those people and to hope that they are still joyful and that they are still walking this great Camino of life.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Lynn. And I acknowledge you for having identified an active, you may not have called it that at the time, but something meaningful for you on the Camino, the Comunitas, and bringing that into your everyday life by distributing those charms to other people. So I think that that's what it's all about, is finding those gifts and then finding ways to share them with other people. I also wanted to just comment on, you made a good point early on about the solitude and how important that is for you to allow your truth to bubble up, or to let the awarenesses bubble up. Again, it speaks to that solitude and time to meet yourself. I think you might have even used those words. And then I like how you said that you kind of wrestled with it. You spent some time with those things that may not have been perfectly comfortable, but I think it really speaks to an active ingredient on the Camino. Thank you.
And Lynn, I'd like to just say, I think you are an active ingredient of the Camino.
That's a good point, Adam.
You are an active ingredient. You handing out your little charms, you know,
Wow.
your charms will have a reaction. Some will be positive reactions and some will be side effects. There'll be a side effect which you may not, for some people. So, but you are an active ingredient, instigating change and well-being for others. So I'd like to congratulate you for that, because honestly, it's a wonderful job. So you are an active. There we are.
That's so sweet. I completely agree, Adam. Dan.
Hey, I wanted to touch on a couple of things that I've experienced recently. And this all ties into the active ingredients of the Camino. When I went on my first Camino in 2018, there was several years in the making. Certain things had to come into place for why I felt compelled to fly to Spain and actually do the Camino. And no matter what I did, I kept on adding things, whether I did research online or I read books, whatever. And even though people would fall away, I kept on adding to why I needed to do it. I knew there was something calling me to do it. So that ingredient, and granted, when you get there, you realize very soon that there is no structure. And for me, most of my life has been structured. And so recently I attended a shell ceremony and also a mentoring meeting at our local chapter for people that had not been on the Camino. And I heard frustration. I heard, oh my God, will I like the food? Will I like how if I get tired, or if I don't like where I'm staying, or all the things that talk themselves out of it, or realizing this is not a vacation. This is not staying at some fancy place, and it's not having the fine dining. You're gonna be tired. You're gonna be hungry. You're not gonna like to mix the salads. You're not gonna like having fries every day with every meal. You're going to experience things, overcrowding at the albergues. And I kept on hearing all these things, and I'm like, I get having the apprehensive, especially if you've never done it. I know the Camino is far more popular than my first Camino in 2018. And you have a lot of people that are just want to do it because they've heard good things about it. But for me, I had a specific reason to go in 2018, a specific reason to go in 21, and I have a specific reason for why I want to go next month on the Primitivo. But the thing that I've heard over today, how important trust is, and just letting you know, as we often say, the Camino provides, and it does. Yes, you're going to have moments where you're going, I'm lonely tonight, or I'm not going to like what I'm doing. But then somehow magically, the Camino provides. And that's because you have to trust the process. And then for those of us that are here today, we've gotten benefit from the Camino, and we still are compelled to enrich our lives with the values of the Camino and what it's brought to us. So I just, it's frustrating. It's almost like I've found the secret sauce, and until you do it, you don't know that you found the secret sauce. I'm a much better human than I was 7 years ago, and that's even with COVID and all the other craziness that are going in. So I say to our fellow pilgrims, just trust the process, and we'll all be better off for it. So that to me, that's the ingredients for success on the Camino.
God, I love that. Thank you. I also heard in there, be a pilgrim. It's the pilgrimage. It's being a pilgrim. That's the active ingredient. That's part of trusting the process. That is the journey. And when you say trust the process, I think it's all in there together. Is that accurate, Dan?
Exactly, yes.
Oh, the other thing I heard in there, I think, was that you had a call. And I'm not putting anybody down or anybody's reasons for why they do the Camino when they do the Camino at all. I know for me, my first Camino was the most meaningful because I had a call to do it. And I had something in my life that happened that just broke me apart. And it was a great time to do something like that. Because it really put me in a place where I could take a hero's journey in such a mindful way. So when you said the word call, it just reminded me of that I think when we can combine our Caminos and our pilgrimages with that kind of a life experience, you know, double the magic or something, who knows?
You can't force it to happen. You
No.
can't say, I'm going to make this happen today or somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
You get what you get out of the community, and you can, in some respects, get other benefits that you didn't think were possible. And
Yeah.
I went for my first Camino for one reason, and I ended up getting back something much more valuable. Let's say
Mhm.
the reason for going was actually I got myself back. And so, which was hugely benefit
Yeah.
for me as well as my family coming back from the Camino.
Yeah.
I think I need a tune up every 3 years.
I was doing the math, 3, 3, 4. Yeah. Yeah. And when you say trust the journey, I think it's trust the heroes. It's archetypal. We're not alone in this. Adam can speak to this so much better than I can, but it is an archetypal journey, and enough people have done it and seen this. There's something going all the way back to Ronnie, who started this out. There's something in there. Thanks again.
Yeah, I mean, and Dan, you said, yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's all uncertainty, the world's turned upside down. That's how it's meant to be. We're stepping into the liminal space, and what is home is the path. The walk to Santiago is the safe, secure bit that you're doing every day. There is your safety. Everything else, the people you're with, where you're staying, the food you're going to, is the uncertainty each day. So it's literally a complete 180 on your day-to-day life, which is why people find it so difficult when they're seeking safety. But the Camino is providing the complete 180. And to have that awareness, actually, I have to embrace this. That's where the personal growth comes from. And it's a rites of passage. I mean, underlying the hero's journey, the Camino is a rites of passage experience. It's designed as a rites of passage experience if we allow ourselves to go through that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thanks,
good
Adam.
points. Really good points.
Let's go to Ellen.
Okay, yeah. First of all, I was had a nice start to my morning. I was watching CBS Saturday morning, and they had a piece about the Camino, and they featured Father Stephen from Warriors on the Way, and so it's like, oh wow, I know him.
That's
And so it was,
cool.
of course, they showed, and as they were showing the cathedral and sites along. And it's like, I've been there, I know that place, I know that priest. And so that was I enjoyed getting to relive a little bit of my Camino and that positive experience that we've all had with Father Stephen. But the my ingredient that's sort of bubbling up and is, I guess, just restating or a different way of saying what y'all have already said is an, an openness to roll with the punches. I had sort of gone into the Camino just willing that my experience will be X, Y, and Z. And as we all know, and I have learned my lesson, you can't do that. You have to, I have to let go of some of those things that I thought I could control and let go and just be open to, yes, I want to be safe. Yes, I want to be cautious of those things that I need to be cautious of, but being open to just not being so controlling and open to something else. One of my church friends is going on his first Camino in June, and he, of course, and I am just, I've been to done one Camino, so I am hardly an expert, you know. So, but he's like, he's asking me for advice. I'm glad he's asking me, but he's coming up with some of all those what ifs that we have all probably all asked. What if I can't communicate with the taxi driver? What if I can't find a room? What if, it's like, just wait a minute, just chill in. It's like, and he's got all of his stuff laid out in his dining room of what he's going to take. He's okay. But it's like, but I'm just observing, and I'm glad that I have that observation to watch a new pilgrim get ready, because it's like, oh gosh, he's in for it, and I'm excited to see how it turns out for him. But I'm getting some of those lessons brought to the forefront for me, watching, you know, in person, live and in person, somebody else getting ready to go. So that openness to roll with the punches is kind of what comes up for me.
Well, thanks, Ellen. And you know what? You are an expert on your own Camino. And I think the wisdom that you've brought home and you've shared with us in the last two or however many of these gatherings that we've had, I think that's great wisdom to share with anybody. You know, don't expect it to be what you think it's going to be or whatever else you've brought home. So I just think that's beautiful. And we've also named that you are the only person around you that has ever really even done this, and everybody thought you were crazy, and now you have somebody coming to you for your expert advice. So I just think how wonderful this is for you. Thank you.
Yeah, and Ellen, I think it's also back to acknowledging, you know, you've, we've been on these calls with you, what, 2 to 3 years now, and from the beginning to where we are now, and you know, that is Camino. That's we start the Camino as a beginner, and then we finish it as an elder, so to speak. It's that natural human journey of growth, and there's the magic. You know, you're living it. It's not the same person you were. It's just wonderful. Acknowledge that, please.
It's a great point, Adam. Let's go to Ronnie.
Oh my gosh, so many things have come up for me as other people have been talking. I just had a couple of things that came up when we were talking, you know, Kathy and Lynn, you guys were talking about things bubbling up while you're on Camino. And I've, you know, as a lot of you know, I've talked a little bit about it. I've had some health things pop up this year. I've already had surgery once. We'll likely be having surgery again within the next year. And so I've been in therapy, kind of trying to work through and make sure that whatever decisions I'm making regarding my health choices are not trauma responses, and that they're not fear responses. They're well thought out, you know, well intentioned, informed decisions that are in the best interest of my health. And so one of the things that we've been doing is digging a little bit back into my past and visiting some of my early traumas, which has been really fun. And so one of the things that we did was EMDR therapy, which is basically it's a method of going back and sort of working back through a trauma experience. And what why it works. It's kind of a strange thing because the therapist is like holding a pen and you're following it with your eyes and then you're talking through the experience. But what it does is stimulate bilateral stimulation. That's what it does. And so you're going through this bilateral stimulation experience. And we did it. And I had just an unbelievable experience with that. Like, I feel like I healed my inner child. I mean, it was really crazy, but we got through the end of that session and she said, this works because of bilateral stimulation, but you know what else is also bilateral stimulation? Walking. I was like, well, it's come full circle. I think I'm healed. I won't be coming back. No, just kidding. But yeah, so I mean, whenever, in all of those feelings, I had a lot of emotions and even like negative emotions coming up while I was walking my first Camino, which was so powerful. Days that I was cranky and days that I was not feeling my best self. And I was talking to her a little bit about that. She's like, yeah, that's because you're in this bilateral stimulation state. And that's what walking does for us. Coloring, interestingly enough, also does the same thing. The other thing that came forward, and Rhonda, I just want to thank you for your beautiful words because they really touched me. Or one of the things that came forward to me while you were talking was that um, we can't demand transformation, right? And I've seen and I've talked and interviewed a lot of pilgrims as I've been a part of this community for so many years, and I've just had a lot of conversations about people who've ultimately been disappointed because they expected something that didn't come. Um, but one of the things that I've learned is that we can't demand that transformation, but if we're open and we trust and we sit with it quietly, the transformation will come and the lessons will come. Just maybe not in the form that we expect, maybe not in the way that we expect, but the transformation will happen. It just may not happen the way we think it will happen. And it won't happen instantly. It's a process of getting through everything that we experienced while we were on Camino or, while we were going through these different journeys. And that's a lifelong process. That's not, you don't get to Santiago and magically turn a switch and it's like, oh, I'm better. But it's more of a process than that. But anyway, that's what has been coming forward. This is an amazing session. I really appreciate you all, but
Funny. Yeah. Shout out to Emilio Escudero, for those of you who know him, because years ago he said, I think it would be fun for somebody to do a presentation at the gathering called Active Ingredients of the Camino. And it just like I've been holding that in this sacred, in my heart, thinking, oh my gosh, someday we need to talk about that. So I agree. I like that you named the bilateral stimulation and the walking. I really think that that's worthwhile as naming as an active ingredient for sure. Such great points. Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks, Ronnie. Yeah.
Karen, let's go to you.
Hi. Well, I'm sort of feeling like I'm in the middle of an evolution for myself. I'm I did the Camino in 22, and as I may have said here, my days of long distance walking from that are done. So I'm going back this fall in September to be a hospital dado with a friend of mine that I met on the Camino. And we're going to Ponferrada, which I loved. Anyway, so I'm very excited about that. And then once we're finished, of course, I'm there. I'm in Spain. I made it that far, so I've been trying to think about how long I want to stay and what do I want to do. And it's been a gradual process, but I'm now at a point where I feel like I just want to stay in Spain. Um, there really isn't anywhere else right now in Europe I particularly want to go. So I think I'm just gonna, at first I was like, I'm just gonna hack around Spain because I love it. And then it's sort of it's sort of evolving into um wanting to see some of the parts maybe on the Norte route or other places that I didn't make it to last time that other friends might have gone on. And that and I don't know if it would be really weird for me to stay in albergues. Part of me would kind of like to do that, but if I'm not doing a Camino, I don't know if that's kosher. So, but it's kind of developing more into, what kind of a journey can I create for myself? What questions can I tackle? Can I look at what's bubbling around that maybe when I'm over there in that magical country might happen for me. So anyway, I just want to thank you for the conversation today because I don't leave until the end of September, so there's lots of time for things to gel.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for your participation in the conversation. I'd say that you're on a Camino right now. I don't think you'd disagree with me. You've probably
No.
thought this too. It's just taking a different form. And it's beautiful that you speak to that because I think we're in real danger if we go back to the Camino and try to do it exactly the same way. So I think we know that and we go back and we say, okay, I can't have the same expectations. It's not going to be the same. And I think what you speak to is that you can still do a pilgrimage, you can still do a Camino wherever you are in life, whatever your heart is calling for.
Yeah.
Love the idea of you going to Spain. I'm so excited for you to be in Hospitalera. And yeah, I can't wait to hear more from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I hear you holding the questions and really seeing this as sacred time.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I heard an active ingredient, giving yourself permission. I mean, I think that's thing for many of us, to give ourselves permission to do ... is hard. It's really, really difficult. And even, so you naming it there, I think that's a real critical active ingredient. Even when we're in Spain on the Camino, I'm going to give myself permission to do whatever I like. How often do we get the chance to do that in life?
Yeah.
So I think you named it there. So thanks, Karen. I think that's a massive, massive active ingredient.
I love that, Adam. I'm going to jump in after Joe, but let's go to you first.
Well, hi, everybody. First of all, thank you to Adam and Kathy. And wow, what great comments I've heard so far. Thank you guys so much for your vulnerability and being able to share so openly. One active ingredient that I think some people think is necessary, but I did not, was having a cell phone. And I did not bring mine to Spain. And I felt that my active ingredient was faith, and that I was just going to go. Like, you guys remember Mr. Magoo and how he would sort of wander through life, and that's kind of how I do. But that's what I did in Spain. And I just sort of went with whatever and just let it unfold. In fact, I'm somewhat irritated sometimes by people's overuse. I'm a college professor, and I go to my classes, and I used to go to my classes, and on breaks, people would be talking to each other and comparing notes and telling what they did. Now everybody's on their cell phone, and they're not even talking to each other. So anyway, and something else I noticed about myself, and I want to piggyback off what Lynn had said, and just say that I don't ever want to go with another person either. I want to go alone. And I like people a lot. I'm a real people person, but I don't, I also want to be alone. And that's kind of what this cell phone does to you, is to me, was kept me from, it keeps me from ever being alone. I mean, I'm always there and always available, and I don't want to be. I want to be unhooked, untethered, unwired, and be able to be in the numinous, the sacred space. And the last thing I'll say is I did meet Emilio just this last week when 4 of the St. Louis chapter members participated in the Hospitalero training here in St. Louis, and it was really good. He was one of the trainers. And I look forward to someday being able to do that too. I won't be able to make it this summer, but hopefully the following summer. So thank you.
Thanks. I love those points. Um, I've been to, I think it's still Horizon does not have Wi-Fi. And there's a sign where you would go and usually look for the password for the Wi-Fi, and it says, we don't have Wi-Fi, talk to each other. Um, and I think it really speaks to what you're saying there.
I think thanks, Joe, for saying that about the phone, because for me it was like it's it's so obvious now that the Camino is changing because of technology, but we got so used to having this technology that it's just become the norm. And for you to actively say no phone, I mean, it just sort of resonated. Well, perhaps that's an active ingredient now, not to have a phone, as opposed to, you know, it's just part of the day to day. We have to do the Camino with such, if we want this inner experience, then it's got to be done with much more intention nowadays than 10, 15 years ago before, when it was just automatic, because that's all that it was. So, yeah, very good point.
Yes, the cell phone can help us in certain ways, and it does. I've heard people talk about how it can help us create community on the Camino. And so, again, for the people who want it, fantastic. And I also think we're in this really special world. You know, going back to the idea of the hero's journey, we're in a whole other world. I think there's a danger when we connect back, you know, every time when we keep connecting back into our regular world from this special world, I think there's the danger of popping out of it. And some of the things that we're talking about, trust, openness, community, just the conversations that will bubble up or the thoughts that will bubble up. I think that we need to be aware that if we're on those phones as much as we tend to be in our everyday lives, some of those things might not be as present or active. I wanted to jump in and just give my 2 cents worth, and then Lynn will go over to you. I think for me, the active ingredient, and these have been touched on too, for the active ingredient for me was freedom. I had, most of you know, my 2 sons were going to college. I was in Spain 3 days after my 2 sons started college, or we dropped them off. And my marriage of 25 years had ended 1 month earlier. So up until that point, I had been so invested in what does this one want for dinner? What's this one allergic to? You know, what time does he need to be there? And how am I going to fit dinner in? And I had so many decisions to make to keep the family just going, which isn't any different than, you know, somebody else's job. But in my case, it was like, I felt like, well, what I discovered on the Camino is myself. You know, what does Kathy like to eat? Um, how do I show up in conversation? Just all kinds of things like that. But along with the freedom of not having anybody else to take care of, and I went alone, I do think that's an active ingredient. It can be as well. For me, it was also the yellow arrows. It was the decision that I'm going to Santiago. And it was the arrow that I didn't have to think, you know, at home it was, what are we having for dinner? What are we having for breakfast? What do we need from the grocery store? Da 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 da. And it was like, just go. You just walk straight. And then somebody else is going to make that decision. That yellow arrow says, turn here. And that really just let me relax into not having to hold so much in my head. And I think that was an active ingredient that allowed so much to open up for me. I could say more about just the active ingredients of rediscovering myself at that time. But that really was the big one for me, was the freedom. To let go, to stop thinking so much.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm hearing this creating space for yourself, for you.
There it is. and the journey continues. It seems like it's gone through multiple iterations since then. And Rhonda, I'm with you. It really is the journey to my authentic self. Lynn, let's hear from you, and then we'll go to Marion.
I just have a quickie, but talking about cell phones, so many people are using apps now for trying to find their way along the Camino. And it seems to me that's just another, they're keeping touch with everybody and and not really letting the Camino settle in. I took my cell phone with me, yes, on all of my Caminos, but I tried not to use the apps. I tried to let you, Kathy, when you talked about yellow arrows, it was just like, oh, yes, yellow arrows. That's that's what I wanted to find, or the ones in France where it's red and white. And that's what I wanted to find, that I let those guide me. That I didn't have to sit there on my phone and say, well, this looks like I'm way off, but suddenly, and I would panic every once in a while, thinking, oh, I haven't seen a yellow arrow in a while. And then there would be one. And it just, my card right now, I give a card out to various people that I like, is that says that I'm following my Camino, looking for the yellow arrows of life.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm really trying to let those yellow arrows, those directions, come to me, rather than actually going out and trying to force them, because that's the only way that they're really authentic for me, is if they come to me and I follow their lead. And that's the way I'm trying to live my life nowadays.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Lynn. I think it speaks to being in the moment. Staying off the phone, to me, speaks to being in the moment. When I walked my first Camino in 2012, you could probably get an international phone. I didn't have one. I mean, phone plan. I didn't have one. So I didn't have access to all of that stuff while I was walking. My two sons went to college, and both schools said, don't communicate much with them for 6 weeks. Perfect timing, right? Don't communicate with them much for 6 weeks. Let them get into, like, they were starting their own Camino. Let them be in their thing. Don't keep, calling from mom. If they need you, they'll call you. So it just worked out beautifully. It's not like I was like I made that conscious choice, but I can look back and say, wow, that was really beautiful. So in prep for this call, Adam and I talked about yellow arrows a lot, and he said what they meant to him. And that active ingredient had a completely different effect on him than it did on me. And I think that might be interesting for you to share, Adam, where for me, they allowed me to settle into not making decisions, and just kind of going and surrendering to it all. But what about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, the real active ingredients are what we don't necessarily, we're not even conscious of, maybe when we're walking, but the magic is happening behind in the background, if we're open to it, and if we journey long enough, just trusting, I think trusting openness, we eventually get to see, oh, that's what's created this transformation. So I see. So for me, it was around just simply embracing embrace the unknown in the beginning when I first walked the Camino. But I didn't know that was an active ingredient. So
Right.
I think that's where we were different. I was just merrily walking, knowing nothing. But over time, we get to see the power of these ingredients if we allow them to work.
Absolutely. Well, do you remember that you had said that the yellow arrow to you meant paying attention?
Oh, in
And
that
for
sense,
me,
yeah,
it meant I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
have to be
yeah,
so alert and pay
yeah,
attention. And
yeah.
but what was it that you said about
Yeah, so
that?
for me, so yeah, it's like it's almost, yes, you're walking, but you've always got one eye open. Where's that arrow? So to me, the Camino, that was the message of the yellow arrow, is awareness, awareness, constant awareness. But you can do everything else, but there's an awareness going on. You're not surrendering your power just to, okay, just merrily walk and all of this sort of stuff, and then you get lost. So for
Right.
me, that was the lesson. Was no, you be aware of life going on around you. To me,
Yeah.
that was the lesson there with the yellow arrow.
And I just thought that was fascinating how we could look at the same thing and have an experience with that same thing, but it was just so different.
Yeah, but that speaks to our. I mean, I think that speaks to each of us. We're unique, and our Caminos are completely unique. No two
Yeah,
Caminos are the same, and that is our journey through life. There's no right or wrong with any of this. It is what it
exactly.
is, um, and that's the gift.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
yeah.
We have a few minutes left here. Let's go to Marian and then Harriet.
Hey, well, thank you, and thank you for all the comments that I've been listening to. Um, I'm on a kind of, I think, a Camino of life this year. I had planned to be on the Camino, um, but I was invited to come to South Africa and do some work, and so it was hard to say no to that. I didn't say no to that, and here I am in South Africa, and I think for this experience, two of the things that I'm finding are real ingredients of it. One is acceptance, and the other is humility. And the acceptance is um, I had expectations about what I was going to find, and I haven't found them. So just accepting that that's okay. This is going to be whatever it is. It's going to be all right. And I'm accepting that. The other thing is the place where I'm living is on the seacoast of South Africa, in a place where there are mountains all along the western coast of South Africa. So so I'm a mile from the sea, but if I go the other direction, I can just cross the little road that's here and be on a trail going up a mountain in a bioreserve. And so a few days ago, I decided, okay, I've been here, I've walked all over town, I've done whatever I've done here, but I haven't been up the mountain. I'm going to go up the mountain. And I blocked out an afternoon, and I did tell a friend I'm headed up the mountain so that um, if I'm not back by dark, you send out the search dogs. But but I headed up the mountain, and I just wanted to get to the ridge where the saddle is between the two peaks. And it's not far. It's maybe, I don't know, 2 miles or something. It's not a big, long walk, and you can see the ridge. It's not a mysterious place. So after I'd been walking for a while, I discovered something doesn't look right. I haven't ever been up here before, but this isn't going to get me. I can see the ridge over there, and I'm over here, and I must have missed the path, the right path to get up to the where I wanted to go. So I thought, no, I'll turn around and go back. So I turned around and I walked for some distance, maybe even half a mile, and found a different path that was going up, and thought, okay, now I found it. This is the right path. And I started to go up that path. And it kept taking me away from where I wanted to go. So I walked along that path for a while, and it didn't turn, and it wasn't going where I wanted to go. And I had to turn back again. And I went back and past the place where the two paths had diverged and continued back down the path that I had come from. And finally, I found it. There was literally a sign that said, with an arrow, that said, here's the path. And I had walked right past it and didn't even see it. So, so at that point, the sun was dropping behind the mountain, and I thought, I'm not going to do this in the dark. So I went down, and I still have the goal to get up there, but I've had to say, okay, I'm just accepting that sometimes there's a path and I can't find it, but I can keep the goal in my heart and the intention, and just keep looking for the right path.
That sounds like Camino wisdom. It sounds like one of Deborah's Camino lessons, right? That she referred to.
Yeah.
And keeping the Camino alive.
Mhm.
Harriet.
I'll just have to put a vote in for the people who take a phone.
I know. There is another side to it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
what I would say is that well, one thing I did is I kept track of my voyage by taking pictures.
Yeah.
I find that at this point in my life, there's a lot of things I forget. And if I was seeing something along the way, I mean, on my first Camino, I think I'd walk the whole day, and then, I'd remember one thing because I was just so in my head, so, and I had a phone, but I wasn't, I wasn't taking pictures. I'd made a strong decision that I would just walk, and whatever came, and I wasn't going to try to capture things. But when I came home, I was so disappointed that I didn't have any of that. So the second time around, I took a lot of pictures, and I would take a lot of pictures um, because then I wouldn't have to keep the stuff actively in my, I wouldn't have to say like, remember the tree, remember that hill, remember that person you were talking to. I would say, can I take a picture of you? And I would take a picture of them. And then I could, and it actually released me from having to remember all that stuff. It would just be somewhere in my phone. The other thing was because I walked, and talked about this before, because I walked a slow, um, and short distance Camino, I didn't really keep up with a cohort of people. So people I met, I almost 100% of them I never saw again. So it was a way of remembering people. Um, and I did a polar steps thing where I wrote things in my phone. That was my because I remember, because the first time around I never had the energy to like write in a journal. So a lot of that just went into my polar steps. And the thing was, I wasn't looking, if you don't look at Facebook or whatever your current, Instagram, whatever those things are, if you don't look at those things, you're really not connected to home anyways. And I don't really remember having this like, some kind of something pulling me back to home from it. And most of the things that the communication with home was just people commenting on my polar steps. And all they were talking about was Camino. So they might ask a Camino question like, oh, you saw this place. I was there too. Or it would be like, I'm going to go, and I think I'm going to go where you went, or what a funny thing happened to you. It wasn't like pulling me back to, there's been a leak in your basement or something. It wasn't any of that kind of stuff. And also because I did walk slowly, there was actually a cohort of people who were also walking slowly, but were not anywhere near me. And we would kind of keep track of where each other were. Like, are you still okay? And it was, and they were telling their Camino stories, and we were telling each other Camino stories on WhatsApp. And as it turned out, and I might have told this before, at our last night, we all met up in Goza and spent the night before we walked into, and we would have never been able to do that or find each other and know, we were all going to stay at the same place to walk into Santiago together. So, and also, oh, one last thing is I'm directionally challenged. So every once in a while, I did have to I didn't have, for a lot of the Camino, I didn't have data. So I would look, and there would just be like this dot on my Google Maps, and it would show me where I was in the world. And that was helpful because I had to keep going. I couldn't add 10 kilometers to, trying to find my spot. My ability to stay healthy meant that I had to go where I was planning to go. So if you, I needed to know where I was.
I
And
really
I
hear
always,
you.
and one more thing, I always had a phone that had a bad battery. you know, would run out. I was always at the last minute on my battery when I would take a Camino and not think I should have gotten a new phone. And so the good thing about that was I had to turn it off most of the time. So I only had it on when I needed it.
Yeah.
That's the story.
Thank you for voicing all of that. I think that there is a healthy way to do it, and that there are certainly benefits that people can enjoy. Yeah, thank you. And Rhonda, let's hear from you, and then I think we're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the comments about the cell phone too. And I think another thing I really appreciate about the Camino was I had my phone, certainly, and there were some days where I needed to hear someone else's voice because my own voice was too negative or too chaotic or whatever. And I couldn't get myself to a place where I could just open myself up to just sort of be inspired or whatever it was. So I'd listen to podcasts, I'd listen to music that I love to listen to. And I was able just to say, for today, this is okay because it's making me happy. It's my own playlist. It feels really good. I'm not. And then the great thing about it is it's almost like standing next to someone who has way too much cologne or perfume on. You just get, it's just nauseating. And so the music and the podcast and everything, it got to a point where it's just like, no, no. And then I could push it away and say, today's the day that I get to be the author of my own narration and I don't have to hear another voice. And so I think in the beginning, I was afraid that I was establishing a bad habit by listening to music or something. And it's like, that's not how it happens, because I think we set out on this journey because we're open to transformation. And like, I think Ronnie said, you know, it comes to us when we kind of are surrendered to that. So, yeah, I guess underscoring the fact that it's our own personal journey and there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's truly just, it's our own journey for sure. Thanks for letting me share that last bit.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's our own journey. There's no right or wrong way. It's I'm thinking I must have done my Camino a long time ago because I had a camera. I didn't use my phone for I had a camera and I had an iPod. And so all my music was on my iPod. So that was a long time ago that I did my Camino. I'm dating myself. Isn't that just funny? But yeah, I did some of that too and loved my music on certain days. It was so uplifting to me.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Mhm.
Adam, did you want to say anything? And then I'm going to close us out here.
I think Rhonda, your statement there is, is absolutely bang on. I think we come, perhaps the gift of the Camino we awaken to is the power of choice. I choose this today, or I choose that today, and there's no right or wrong, as you said. So perhaps that is an active ingredient. We grow into discovering the power of choice.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's a great point. And attuning to our own choices, which may be different moment to moment. I think that's a great way of discovering ourselves and growing closer to ourselves and the self-love and care.
Mhm.
I wanted to go back to a question at the very beginning. Adam, there was a photo that you showed of the guy with the backpack with the triangle, and then it was up on the wall. I've heard that, but somebody asked what that triangle meant.
Oh, so that was a chap I walked with, Alex, and he was he's Brazilian, and he was from, I think, Minas, it's a state in Brazil, Minas Gerais or something. So we were walking, and that was in the town of Carrion. No, gosh, it's been a long time ago. Carrion de los Condes, I think, or something. And it's his state flag hanging on the wall, and he just happens to be walking with it on the back of his backpack. So it's just pure coincidence, because he said, well, why the hell is my state flag from Brazil on the wall in this town? So there was a Brazilian bar, and we went into it, and it was because Paulo Coelho had passed through back in 1988 or something like that. So that's the reason. But it was just to show the mystery. The Camino provides mystery, answers you.
Yeah,
So that's that.
that's great. Wow, this was a rich and vibrant conversation, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for being here and for being a part of this community. And thank you for your participation and your stories and your thoughts. It just seems to be getting stronger and stronger. And Adam and I just really are grateful that this is resonating and you keep coming back or showing up for the first time. So we will be taking May off. We have other things going on, and we'll be convening again June 21st, and the theme will be Camino Fate. You'll be receiving a email to jog your thoughts about what that might be, but you can be thinking about that between now and then. We hope you'll join us. And July, we're not doing a session, but in August, we have a special guest coming back. It's our first repeat guest. Anne Sieben is coming back. Last time she was with us, she was talking about her St. Martin's walk all through all kinds of towns in France. And she has a break and will be joining us again. And that date is August 16th. So I think that's it. Oh, I did also want to just say, Adam brought this up a couple times, bringing the Camino home. Think about what was really, did something touch you today? Was there an active ingredient that you'd like to reconnect with and see if you can't bring some of that back home into your everyday life? I think not necessarily this crowd, but some people can tend to think that all that magic happens in Spain. The truth is the magic happens inside of us. And I think we can recreate that in ways when we come back home. So we just invite you to consider what kind of magic and active ingredient might support you at this point in your life.